from PRX.
Friends beyond binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is a classic episode of Sleep With Me, 484, Nuns in Space in Review. And I'm thinking this is a season 2 recap, but like kind of these are making of episodes. And this one I think I talk about the difference between a serial episode and an episodic episode, which I guess I was thinking about even way back then, 9 years ago. But if you ever want to fall asleep to like some of the thoughts and works that go into the show, this would be the episode for you. It'll be a little bit looser, a little bit more PG-13, but in 2025, we want to make sure you have enough content to keep you going to sleep. So we've added an extra remixed episode in addition to the 2 new episodes we put out every week. And if you like these, vote with your wallet. Sign up at Sleep With Me Plus and let me know this is why. Say, man, I like that you're putting out more content. You're doing your best to serve us and help put us to sleep, keep us comfortable. So that's what I'm here to do. Let me know. Thanks. Sleep With Me podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Hey, everybody, Scoots, this is the time that I used to try to convince you to sign up and support the show right now. You know, those of you that are listening and already know how much you value Sleep With Me, to tell you to go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. But my messages just haven't been working. So now I'm just using listeners' words of why they supported the show. So if you could listen closely, maybe you'll hear something in their words that'll say, oh yeah, of course I should support Sleep With Me. This comes from Celeste. I discovered Sleep With Me from a Google search while I was on vacation, desperately trying to get to sleep. I made the choice to support the show because I don't ever want it to go away. The podcast is unique. There's nothing like it. Gentle, funny, weird, and kind. Makes me feel held somehow, like there's something I can count on to come gently by my side when I'm struggling to go to sleep or back to sleep. I can hardly even express how valuable it is to me practically and emotionally. I feel proud to support it. I like thinking I help others maintain access to the podcast. I also like thinking that my monthly contributions are a meaningful thank you to Scooter and everyone that works on the show. So thank you so much, Celeste. And yeah, if you relate to what Celeste is saying, don't wait, like Celeste said. If you're in a position to support the show, you relate to what Celeste said, support it. I don't need to convince you. I just got to make sure you hear me to take action. So sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thank you so much, Celeste. Oh, Mystery Bart, a lot of people help out on the show. Who are they?
Chris Poster Son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes. Carl W. the Legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the Mystery Bart. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at JonathanMann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Anna like banana. Leah does the transcripts.
Thanks, Mystery Bart. Don't forget, if you're looking for access to Sleep With Me Plus, to access to ad-free episodes, but you're not in a financial position to support the show, you can earn those for free. By referring people to free podcasts at our referral program, sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer. If you're like, yeah, I can't afford to support the show, but I really want some of that sweet, sweet bonus content on Sleep With Me Plus, sign up for our referral program and send me an email. Thanks, everybody. What do you say we slow it down and get on with the show? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and friends beyond the binary, It's time for the podcaster who's staring at a moving blanket, because that's what I have in the walls of my climbing closet. It's also time for Sleep With Me. You're up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble with getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep. Well, it's good because it's time for Sleep With Me, as I said. And, we are the podcast that puts you to sleep, and we do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to do is create a safe place where you can set aside whatever's been keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts, feelings, emotions, noise, seasonal stuff, weather, travel, whatever it is. Could be any of those things. It could be none of those things. What I'm going to do is send my voice across the deep dark night. I'm going to use creaky dulcet tones, slow, pointless meanders. I'm going to use moving blankets that won't be moving. They'll be stable. They're stable blankets. No, they're not that kind. Wait a second. That's a good question. Maybe we could come back to that. I'm going to use a variety of techniques. And what I'm going to do is the safe place. What I mean by that is it's a place where you could lay down. Preferably you're already laying down, where you're treated with dignity and respect. Your boundaries, you're within comfortable boundaries, and there's no, at least from this podcast, there's no expectation and no pressure. You're not under any pressure or expectation to listen or to fall asleep. I'll be here an hour, and I'll be taking my time be going somewhere, but it'll be like, is he going anywhere or not? But you can listen for a while. I'll be doing my best to entertain that 33% of your brain that won't stop chattering, or, distract you from whatever that, neighbor's doing with the saw again. You say, what time of night is it? What is it? What are they doing with that saw over there? Is it a vacuum? Is that some sort of new high-powered vacuum cleaner? This podcast also, you wouldn't know, but I just had to pause it while my neighbor was running the water upstairs. And I forgot what I was talking about. It's just a podcast in which you take your mind off of stuff so you can drift off. I'll be here for an hour. You don't got to listen. Ideally, this podcast brings a little bit of lightness and levity. Not brevity, holy moly, that's not what I'm known for. But levity and whatever that other thing I said was to bedtime. Where for me it could get so serious, I would dread going to bed, and then I would be aware of every passing second. Where this one, if you're listening, ideally I'm carrying you away on my wings of pointlessness or on a river of meanders. Or, trying to make this podcast tonight will be like normally the setup is we have the business part at the top that takes about 4 or 5 minutes. Then about a 12-minute intro where I ramble and try to make a metaphor about the podcast. That's like a good proportion of our audience falls asleep there. And then we'll be just talking about wrapping up this first season of Nuns in Space. But you might have heard me, if you're new here, you might not know where I record this podcast in my one-bedroom apartment in the East Bay of Northern California, in what I lovingly refer to as a climb-in closet, because it's like not a walk-in closet, but I guess it could be a press-in closet. You press yourself against the wall and you can get around the clothes, and then I've cleared out the back of the closets, just room for a little IKEA office chair, upside down boom arm with a mic on it and a recorder, and on the floor is a desk lamp, also from IKEA, and a couple other things, but not that important. That's the climbing closet. But on the walls, and actually even hanging above my head, are moving blankets. Which I wonder about that. I say I'm calling them moving blankets, but they're not moving. Like, you could use them when you're moving. Isn't moving a verb? Movers, that's, is moving ever been, other than moving blankets, moving blankets, moving, Is there any other moving nouns? You know, because usually used it like Bob Marley uses it, moving and grooving. No way, is it? I don't know. I already lost it. And an anti-earworm come up there. Oh yeah, Lord, I gotta keep moving. And then there's moving and there's grooving. You know, there's just get a move on. Those are verbs, right? Am I right? Can I get a grammarian? Can I get a gram? What? Move. So I'm surrounded by moving blankets. That's what I'm saying. And that's usually, it deadens the sound. Try to keep out the sounds of my neighbors. It doesn't really keep sounds out. But, you know, it just makes it, and it helps me. It makes me feel like, I feel like a package, moving to the new house. That could actually be happening. I say, well, they box scoot up and they just move them from location to location until his drone, because his droning it gets through the walls and the neighbors, they complain. Speaking of neighbors, here's a little fact. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 neighbors currently. I had 5. I had a lovely young man named Elliot, but he moved. He went to go back to school back in Wisconsin. But I don't believe any of my. I think I've told 1 or 2 neighbors about the podcast, but I think they looked at me like with the same disbelief that your neighbors look at you when you tell them about the podcast. And then I said to myself, Drew, never speak of that again. And I said, done. So I'm not sure if any of my neighbors ever can hear me. I talk to myself that this won't be a surprise all the time anyway. In fact, I just got home from Trader Joe's where I like to sing, especially in the holidays. Pack your golden age from allure, gather near to us, I sing it about the aisles I'm in. But I don't know if any of my neighbors actually know about the podcast, other than they say, because it's not like I wouldn't say something strange anyway. They say, did he say he's a mod aster? They say, that's right. Yeah, don't forget about I said anything about podcasts. I'm a mod ass. Yeah, exactly. I'm a mod aster. And they just say, that's very nice, Drew. Great. And actually, they're really nice people. I'm just, I'm the awkward one. And I try not to let that affect. So I was just wondering, I wonder if anyone is he talking to himself, or did he leave the TV on, or is he in the closet talking? And is he does he have a frog in his mouth? What is going on down there? Now, ideally, these are problems you'll have because you'll be listening to podcasts so much your neighbors will wonder. They say, who was that last night? Your neighbor, your Lurlane or whatever, the nosy neighbor, the judgmental one. She'll say, Maud, was there a man in your apartment last night? They say, actually, there was. Does he have creaky dulcet tones? No, that was another man. He lives in a speaker. He's the Brainbot Entertainer of the Year. And my boyfriend, so I had my gentleman caller and my boyfriend, but my gentleman caller was already asleep, so I put my boyfriend on, and he just rambles on through the night to me, creaky dulcet tones and all. And then she could pick her jaw off the floor and say, good night, Maud. If you have trouble sleeping, my boyfriend, he goes wherever you wish, I don't know. Are people still judgmental like that? They'd say, boyfriend. They say, but what are you going to loot? Maud, come on in. Was that it? I'm a mod aster, by the way, Maud. How those asters used to be? I traveled back in time. I brought the mod movement. Well, actually, I had to go figure out what mod is on Wikipedia. Then I traveled to the mod era, whenever that was, London, whenever, observed it. Then I traveled 10 years earlier so I could buy the clothes at a discount. Then I traveled to the Gilded Age Asters, maybe. I don't know. Maud. And, I brought the mod. They said, who are you? Are you a friend of Jacob's? And I'd say, no. I'm the mod aster. The one no one talks about till now. They say, well, what are you wearing? I say, the style of the day. Tomorrow's the day. This will be the style, though. And a lot of times, my mod might say, what is he talking about? And I say, I'm just rambling. I'm your boyfriend. I'm her boyfriend. I can be yours, too. It's no pressure or friendship. Totally no strings attached. No expectation to listen. No expectation to sleep. But yeah, I'm your boyfriend. I'm here to take your mind off stuff. I'm going to use all that stuff. Send my voice across the deep, dark night, mod. One mod asked her to another, and she'd say, I knew you knew my secret. And I said, I did. We can get in my time machine, and we can head back and confuse the asters together. It'll be like Harold and Maude, but Maude asters. And then she'll say, what? Who's Harold and Maude? And they say, it doesn't matter, but we're going to have a great time. So this podcast is a bit ridiculous. At times, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I indulge myself because I say, well, just make it lulling and soothing. Observe stuff and go slow. Because I'm glad you're here. If you're new, give it a couple tries. It doesn't work for everybody. But this podcast is well-intentioned. The reason I started it, because I said, why aren't there any grown-up bedtime stories? Because I've been there, lying there, unable to sleep. And I said, I think I could make something that, has enough adults in there to put some grown-ups to sleep. So I'm glad you're here. I appreciate your time. I really hope and I really yearn I can help you fall asleep, all right? All right, everybody, it's time to talk about tonight's sponsor, ZocDoc. And I don't know if you're like me, but if you've ever had something come up where you're like, I probably should talk to my doctor about this, but then you're like, well, then I got to go online. I got to find an appointment. I got to make an appointment. I got to make sure our openings line up. Or like, do I need to see a specialist? Who would I even go see? For me, making an appointment with a doctor can seem time-consuming and daunting. But thanks to ZocDoc, we finally have an easy and painless way to find and book a doctor that's right for us. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and choose the right one for your needs and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with over 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, from primary care to urgent care, and more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, and are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and are highly rated by verified patients. And here's the thing, I know I'm going to be moving in the next 6 months to a year, and I've heard from so many listeners that use ZocDoc that have moved or changed their insurance and used ZocDoc to find the right doctor for them and their needs. So I know I can count on ZocDoc. It means you should check it out too. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments to go to ZocDoc.com/sleep to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/sleep. ZocDoc.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. All right, so hey, everybody, this is like one of these episodes where we kind of talk about story and the podcast in general. We kind of have like a wrap-up of Nuns in Space and talk about writing process and stuff. So I think for most people at work, and for those of you that are interested in the stuff, you can always listen during the day, but I'll try to keep it droning, and I'm not going to be working off any notes, so that should make it for extra, what do you call it? Extra lulls. So when we were talking, let's see, what will we go through here? Kind of like a general wrap-up of Nuns in Space. And then maybe talk about what I'm working on next, and maybe just some general stuff. Actually, some general writing stuff, too, will be in here, just about my changes in my routine and stuff. So Nuns in Space, we stopped at 19 episodes, and This was kind of the first episodic series, as I thought it used to. When I first started making it, I thought it was called a procedural, but luckily I have listeners that are, that said, no, it's episodic, which makes sense. And so let's just get to, why did we stop it at 19? Actually, I was surprised we made it to 19 episodes. I was like, holy cow, we're on episode 19 because of the episodic thing. And because of the chugging train-like nature of the podcast, I guess I wasn't really realizing how many episodes we had made. I realized I put them out every week, but I'm also recording and writing them. And just when you're having to churn that out every week, especially when you get into a zone, you're just like, every week I got to write and record a Nuns in Space. And it actually becomes reassuring in some sense, because now I'm in the opposite place where I'm just starting up the new writing routine of what we're going to do next. And it's kind of like it's frightening in a little bit, because you're back in the unknown. But also I could have kept going. And I think some part of my gut said, okay, we're at 19, right around 18, 19, I said, okay, let's not let this get stale here. And, let's not let this get easy. I don't want things to be easy on the podcast, or I think that's when I think it becomes where it could drift into too boring or too, I don't know. It's just what I like about making the show is it's very challenging. And not that it became easy, because it wasn't like it took me any less time to make each week. It just was I think it was less, I guess my default, I've talked about this as a general character flaw I have, or challenge, if you want to put a positive spin on it, that there's a big part of me that's always in an unhealthy way, and I guess probably a healthy way too, seeking out total certainty. And so I didn't want to seek certainty through to be okay, well, this is working. Let's not mix it up. Let's mix it up while it's working. I don't know, just part of my gut, which the same gut that told me to start making a silly podcast, just said, I think, and I was saying no, believe me, right at 18, it said, I think we need to start something new. And I said, well, I don't have a clear beat on the new thing. That's why I'm trying to buy time. And my gut said, well, I think we should wrap it up with episode 18. And I said, well, I don't have anything to start writing. I don't have certainty. And my gut said, well, and then I said, well, I'm not sure. I think I have an episode 19 in me. Just because I don't know. So, but I still, then I went into a debate of okay, do I take 2 weeks off of just take 2 weeks off to write and probe and discover something new, or I had a general idea of what I was going to do next, but I didn't have it wasn't certain. Do I just start writing, or do I take a week off? And I think I probably took 4 days off, and they said, no, we get this is what is working is not taking time off. And don't get that mixed up with a perfectionist side versus a rigor side. These are gray areas, but it's not like I was oh, I need to take 2 weeks off because I'm tired or drained. It was I need to take 2 weeks off because I'm scared and I want not clarity, certainty. It would be one thing if I was well, I just want to take 2 weeks off to get some clarity about what I'm going to write next. I think that's an acceptable thing. You also have to adjust to, how this train runs on a schedule. How are you going to do that? And those kind of things. So, I don't know. My gut said, well, let's just start writing the next thing and we'll figure it out as we go, which kind of falls into this huge positive discovery we made I made or whatever, of testing out this idea of episodic series versus serial series. And what kind of led me to do episodic one is the feedback I've gotten, and I try to keep good track, and we do surveys, and I get emails and Twitter and Facebook. And while I don't spreadsheet all the feedback, and I can't overweigh certain feedback, there was when I was watching the feedback, I said, oh, well, maybe this serial seasons for new people or people that fall asleep, it kind of creates this intimidation factor. Oh, well, I can't start it on episode 5 because I won't, even though I'll be asleep, I won't know where it is. Or, oh, I fell asleep during episode 5 and now episode 6 out, so maybe I just shouldn't listen at all. And I want people to feel secure and say, okay, well, I'll just give this episode a listen without having to overthink it or worry about, I want the whole goal of the podcast to say, okay, put it on and I'm going to go to sleep, without any hassle. So I guess the low friction idea was, okay, an episodic series will have lower friction because people can get on and get out whenever they want. And if they miss an episode, they won't have a need to say, well, you got to listen to the other ones. But if there are completists, they can listen in order, or actually as the season went on, it was like, okay, you could kind of listen in out of order. I could have almost shuffled the episodes for the most part. I mean, in the first 4, I think, or the first 3 are serialized more or less, but that was kind of important to kind of get the concept out and everything. So I don't know, finding the episodic thing was a huge benefit for that, for saying, okay, this is more welcoming to listeners, whether new listeners or longtime listeners. So past that test, then the test 2 is it sustainable? Can it be done week after week after week after week? And when I first decided to do it, it was like, well, I don't know. Is it sustainable? And I think, as I said, it kind of proved that it was sustainable because, and this isn't a guilt thing, it takes an incredible amount of effort just to put out 1 podcast episode a week. So to put out 3, that's one of the most important lenses after, okay, is this accessible to listeners? Will this be good content to put the listeners to sleep? And now with the experience of almost 500 episodes, I can say, and within my experience, does this work in the context of the podcast? So that's test 1. Then just as important as test 2, is it sustainable? Is anything I do within the podcast, can it be, it's not really repeated, but can it be placed and done week after week after week? Because I can tell you after week 1 or week 2, it's fine. But once you get into those 10, 7, 8, 9, 10, you like the desert, repeating things, it becomes it's just an important question to ask. And the episodic thing fit that to a T. And then I guess 3 is is in this kind of is a part of related to, is it sustainable? Is it creatively challenging? I think, is it creatively fulfilling would be another question, but is it creatively challenging in a positive way? And not that it's hard and uncomfortable and a little bit painful, I would say, but not in a negative way. I don't know how else to describe it, but in that, because I guess one concern with the episodic thing is well, I like the challenge, even though I've felt like it's been too big a challenge, and that's maybe something we'll talk about, but having a serial story and having an arc and stuff like that, an overarching arc, of the season and maybe some story resolution. And is that part of what was sustainable? These were questions I was asking before. Is the serialness of it driving the story and making it easy to keep telling it over time? Because, again, it's well, am I going to be able to keep this up every week? I mean, because I guess we just did Nuns in Space for a third of a year, 19 weeks. This will be week 20. That's more than it. So think about a third of your year at work. But I guess, so was it creatively challenging in a good way? And I'd say yes. And it actually made me, my fear of the challenge of making the episode self-contained in and of itself, and the different ways I was playing with story structure, and then not having to worry about the overarching narrative. Like some of the nice things about episodic series for the audience and the creator is, okay, it kind of goes back to where it started in Nuns in Space. We're still in a ship in search of the Natchez following delusion. And actually, like, I mean, I guess this is unfortunate, but like making a sleep podcast, it's not that essential as like, I mean, there is, I guess, some part of me that feels torn, like, am I not, and this is with everything I make, is like, am I not living up to the potential of these characters or this story? Am I disappointing these characters, or am I disappointing the story? I don't know. That might be the creative fulfillment question. And I mean, sometimes I have to say, well, that's not my job as Scooter. Like, that might be what Drew wants, but as Scooter, you know, my job is to pass those other tests. And also, Drew, I want to make sure it's creatively satisfying for you and challenging. Or maybe this is Drew with Scooter, because it's like, but we also have this time management thing where the episodes have like, so sometimes sustainability trumps your creative satisfaction, and how much of that is like a reality thing and how much of it is just a desire that, like an ambition that's pushing you in a good way, that it shouldn't be satisfied. And how much of it is just reality versus pure perfectionism. It's like, okay, well, that's good that you're creating stories and characters that you feel like you can't, that have a greater potential than you can fulfill, versus being like, well, I'm overperforming my story or something. I don't know. And then fitting it into the sleep context, to be like, well, is that an unfair burden? Like your ambition. I never want my ambition to get away in the way of the context of the podcast. I think the great thing about the podcast is there's a system of checks and balances naturally, because the fact that it has to come out every week and be sustainable curbs perfectionism and like that kind of perfectionist ambition. But so I guess what was my, well, I guess as you'll find out, but overall judgment creatively on the episodic thing was that it was challenging in a great way. I really enjoyed it. I really found it relieving in some sense to start every week anew. And I felt like, okay, this is like, we're still getting there. I think maybe this next one, I won't even number the episodes. So that'll make it even more accessible to all listeners that may fall asleep and enjoy falling asleep to the next thing. But yeah, I guess I was very happy with the episodic thing, and almost in some sense, I'm like, this does fit, and I don't have time to plot out entire seasons. It's just a reality. Like, I barely have time to make the podcast and keep up with the administrative side. And that, I don't think that's going to change. I mean, the chunk of time the podcast occupies, even as I find ways to delegate stuff and create partnerships, and like the podcast is still going to take up, like, just I don't know, it's like unfair. It's like, okay, well, if you want to do something like that, maybe do it outside the podcast as a hobby. So I guess my thing is a thumbs up on the episodic series. I guess next we'll talk about like the process side, because I know a lot of listeners like, they say, those of you that may be awake and listening, hearing about the process. And also hearing about some of my routine, the process rooted in a routine, how my routines are changing, just like unexpectedly. But so what was new about the process, other than that the series was episodic, as I talked about before, or maybe during the season? I was testing out Dan Harmon's story embryos, story circle kind of structuring as a model. So that was one thing. The second thing was I was kind of trying, so I write on a 7-day schedule, ideally, because if I fall off that 7-day schedule, you have a cascading effect, a domino effect. So, and the only reason I'd fall off that schedule, I mean, if it was something unexpected, that would be fine. I could adjust. But if I fall off that 7-day writing schedule because of procrastination or creative perfectionism. That's a problem. It creates impossibility to stay sustainable. But I did change around my 7-day writing process slightly. So, yeah, to create day one of a much more, and I think this is part of the story embryo idea that kind of Dan set forth, but then in a different way of approaching it in my own way, was day one of the writing process. I would just wouldn't be writing. I would do some reading. And we'll kind of talk about my recommendations for what kind of reading, but reading, like to kind of create, like usually in my day one of my writing process would be straight blue sky, be like, okay, what's happening in the next episode? Because if it was a serial, it's like, where do we need to start? Where do we need to finish? But the episodic one, you're starting with, you're saying, okay, I know where we're starting. We're starting on a spaceship with the nuns from my childhood, following trails of delusion in search of the Niches. So, okay, so where are we starting? What is the conflict? Or in the situation with Dan's story structure, Dan Harmon's story structure, you say you need. So what is the need? We kind of know the you, but then it's like, okay, what are the current circumstances of the you? And then what is the need? And then when you look at what do the characters need, it's like, okay, who's like, then it's like, then you start to, if you get stuck, you say, okay, well, who's like, what are the obstacles or what's the conflict? Who's creating problem, who has what, who wants what, I guess is okay, but I was talking about schedule-wise. So day one now for Nuns in Space, almost every day one was spent doing some reading, taking notes. The reading that would be directed to the episode or help me uncover. Let me just talk about this because it might be more confusing than it needs to be. And I'm not going to tell you what book I was reading because, I don't know. I guess if you really studied the notes, maybe you could figure it out if you're like a patron, because that's where I post my show notes. I think at like $10 and up, but I'll tell you, you could take, and I was talking about this at the meetup at the Dickens Fair, is like, we were talking about the Enneagram, or sometimes I joke about the DS, what's it really called? They always call it the DSVM, but it's the DSMIV, I think, or something, DSVM4, whatever it's called, or the Myers-Briggs test. But I would recommend, and so this situation will be faux, because I'm not going to tell you the books I'm reading. You should just randomly pick like a book, like either a self-help book or a personality test type book. Those might be a little bit too dry. Well, let's just say a self-help book. Let's just take a good one that a lot of people are reading and that it's on my list to read, not but is Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert's book. I think that's what that's called. Let's just pretend I opened season. Let's just pretend that was a book I used with Nuns in Space. I didn't, and I haven't read that book, but it is on my list, and I hope it's called Big Magic. But let's just say, so what do I mean is that, and I think that one's broken into like kind of micro chapters because I've looked at it, but I haven't read it. Well, let's just say there's 19 chapters in that book because that would be easy for this example. Each episode on the first day of writing, I would read chapter 1. But as I was reading it, I'd be taking notes and saying, always like with the idea of that I'm writing in Nuns and Episodes, like, okay, like what character would be reading this chapter? Or what antagonist would be reading this chapter? That's what I was mostly using is like, okay, because especially with this one, because it's like Elizabeth Gilbert is trying to empower people. I would much prefer to empower my antagonists because then your protagonist has to like do like, especially if Elizabeth Gilbert is empowering your antagonist with big magic, then your main character or all your characters they're going to have to come up with something better to get to the end of the episode. If they have to, go against Elizabeth Gilbert and big magic, that's going to be tough. So almost like taking like something like in the self-help or inspiration or anything, or spirituality, whatever it is, and saying, especially I think, like sometimes you could use it for character development, but also this is like antagonist development. Say, okay, or just conflict. Like, okay, well, this is like a conflict resolution idea in this chapter. Just to get like, I guess I don't want to use it. I guess that would be the theme of the episode, or as Dan kind of talks about it in his like his story embryo thing of like. The top half of the circle and the bottom half, and then the 4 quadrants, or like the conscious and subconscious levels. So that's what I would spend day 1 doing. And ideally by the end of day 1, my percolation process would either be going on and be like, okay, well, I have some ideas, or like sometimes you read like 4 paragraphs and you say, oh boy. I mean, like that one, it's like, oh wait, you're telling me the antagonist has big magic. Okay, I can work with that. And then, because let's just say I didn't read the book, which I didn't. You say, okay, so the antagonist has big magic. What does that mean? And that's good, because then you have another question to kind of try to answer. Then you're not going to get creatively blocked. Or, I mean, maybe I'll still procrastinate, or mostly my thought, I'll just tune into another thought, of worrying or something instead of procrastinating. But that'll keep you from getting, you have to answer, okay, so what is big magic? That's a question you have to answer. So how are you, you can choose to procrastinate, but if you're going to answer that question, you can just start writing and say, okay, well, what does big magic mean in this situation? And then kind of going with Dan, it says, okay, well, what's the next charge? Okay, well, maybe one of the nuns doesn't like magic. And I say, okay. And then I would think, okay, well, you know what this reminds me of is Phoebe Judge, who makes one of the people who makes Criminal. And I saw them live, and I know Phoebe's interested in magic, and it's just the most charming thing. And then the fact that Lauren, the producer on Criminal, like Phoebe practices all her, when she's practicing. So then kind of Lauren's had enough. She's like, I'm over Phoebe and the magic. And if you're writing all this down, you say, okay, so what do we got now? So we got Phoebe Judge, we got a nun that doesn't like magic, and we have an antagonist with big magic. And they say, okay, well, that's, and this could be day 2 of my writing process, but I would still be looking for these positive and negative charges. So we wouldn't be there yet. Then you can kind of listen to that other episode where I was talking about using Dan Harmon's story structure for feeling nothing. But that's juicy so far. So it's like, okay. So say, okay, what am I going to say? Character doesn't like magic. So then you could say, like, magic's good. Okay. So magic's bad in the hands, but you don't like magic. So acceptance of magic versus rejection of magic. Or you could play with Phoebe Judge and saying rejected by, like, awkward male magicians versus empowering herself through magic. And then you say, well, geez, who could be the antagonist there? Would it be Phoebe Judge, or would it be these male magicians and magic? And they say, okay, space station, that's a magic shop, and it's called Big Magic. Look, we could be doing episode 20 right now. This is not so. And you say, okay, Big Magic Station, Scooter would like that. And then then it's like, okay, we need the big magic trick maybe to get something. And you say, okay, now we're getting there. So then at that point, this would be maybe day 3, where I would already starting to feel nervous, because it'd be like, okay, the day 3 and we still don't have anything written. But at some point I would start using, like, now I have this alternating thing I do, where I used to just do one thing. So like I'll go through Dan's story structure is like 8 points. And again, if you're first listening to this or whatever, you don't need to lean on, like, this isn't fundamentalism, story structure. It's, this is like finding the bones for the puppet or whatever. But Dan's structure goes, you need go search, find, take, return. Is that 8? You need go, search, find, take, return. That looks like it's only 7 points. Oh, I forgot about find. You need to go search, find, take. Or maybe discover. I don't know. I'm not good at I'm not good at memory. Is this a memory test? But whatever. I can't believe I'm recording this, but whatever. So I try to like plot it out on the circle. Just this is what I've been doing for these 19 episodes. And I'll see how far I can make it. I say, okay, like ideally I have a little bit more of a charge so I can say, okay, this is about anti-magic versus pro-magic. So then you say, okay, so this is where it starts. And then I would start plotting it out. You need to go search, find, take, and I'd see if I make it to the end. Change. That's the last one. Take, return, change. How'd I forget that? That's 8. Start plotting it out and see where, if I can make it to 8, even if it's, and you can try different ways. You can say, okay, these are the events of this episode. This is just this character's needs. So you can be super on the nose. This is just outlining. This is just writing. I mean, just this morning I was writing and I said, okay, I was stuck. And I said, okay, let's just go through, let's just be on the nose about this character's emotional, like just totally, this character's this, passive aggressive, and then this, and then this. Because this is just a tool to help you. Again, this isn't like anything. So usually I would do a circle, then I would look over a circle, and if it's day 3, I'm not going to be feeling good. And then usually the circles, those of you that have seen my notes, they can be, like sometimes they don't make it to 8. Sometimes I'm like taking, like building onto the circle. So then it just looks like a ton of, notes everywhere. And let's say I did that for day 3. Then day 4, I would start to bullet point it. So then I'd look at the circle and I'd rewrite it in a list and change it to be like, okay, that doesn't work. So I'd say, okay, like we get, because you can't get to big magic unless you have a need to go there, the station. So say, okay, we decided like, I don't know, we decided we needed to, I don't know, we needed some, so we're still stuck, which is fine. So you put it like, we need something, we need a magic trick for some reason. So we go to big magic station. And then a big magic station, and you just start listing stuff. And then I'll also be writing dialogue and saying, okay, this character is going to say this. Like, so sometimes it'll be all on one page. Sometimes it'll be 2 competing lists with the dialogue on. Sometimes the dialogue's mixed in. Sometimes it's on one side. Sometimes it's on the other. I'll also be looking for the in. Like, what is the in at the start of the episode with the pen pal? Is like a unrelated or like tangentially related thing, magic. So that would be an easy one. Say, okay, magic tricks, misdirection. Well, like, what am I going to talk to my pen pal about? So then you just keep going through. And a lot of times, as I said, one of my keys to my process is personally is trying to find the questions. If you got a question, if you don't know, you say, okay, well, why do we, okay. Like, and especially if you're closing it out, like your time writing for the day, you got to trust your subconscious to be like, why do we need a magic trick? Underline, irritating question mark. And you say, I don't know. And then the next day, maybe And then if you get stuck, just start like, right. If you're like, just start writing 30 reasons why would you need a, and you don't even need to put it in the story context. Like, why would I need a magic trick? To impress someone, to confuse someone, to please like a pro. Like, what if I was at a retirement village and I needed to, or what if I was visiting a relative and someone's last request, job application, or I work at a magic shop, but I don't know any magic. Do they say, okay, wait, maybe that's what I could talk to my pen pal about? Okay, there you go. But that still doesn't answer the question, why do I need a magic trick? Then you say, maybe you should keep listening, or maybe you should write the dialogue for the pen pal thing, and then maybe something will come out of that, like a story. Oh, yeah, pen pal. I remember this time Phoebe Judge came into the magic shop, and then I didn't know it was a Phoebe Judge. And I don't know, something like that. And then so that you're you're just trying to uncover the next question to be answered. That'll hopefully, it'll just keep you going. But for me internally, day 5, then we get to day 5 of writing. That's when, and we'll talk about the times, but up until I try to write in, I'm trying to find a new strategy, but normally I was writing on train. So 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, and any other time I could squeeze in every day. And on the weekends, as soon as I'd wake up, ideally after I started drinking coffee, I'd just start writing. But at day 5, that's when I start to feel pressure because I say, oh boy, this isn't refined enough yet to make it through an episode. So then I would take my bullet point notes and try to make another circle and say, okay, what do we have now? And then ideally, day 5, we're rolling a little bit more. So then I'm also as soon as I do a story structure, then I'm making another list and saying, or bullet points or a sequence of events and saying, okay. And then going back or just writing sequentially or writing a scene and saying, okay, I know this is going to happen here. So how do we get there? Like with that Long Lost Buddies episode, I knew that we had to get to the episode of Long Lost Buddies. And I knew that one of the conflicts would be me and my nervousness and my perfectionism. And then another one would be the nuns' pressure on me. So sometimes if you just get, I don't know, there's a different challenge each time, I guess, when you're doing this, as a lot of people know. So that's day 5, and hopefully at day 5 it's starting to come together, but probably not. And then day 6 comes, and day 6 is probably the same as day 5. It's either picking up where I left off or starting it again, either starting a list or starting a story circle and then going to the list. Or if things are going well, writing some dialogue for the pen pal, or going to scenes and saying, okay, what is in here? But usually we're still still not working. And this isn't to say that 50, even those 30 minutes, I'm daydreaming, I'm getting nervous, I'm thinking about something else. Ideally, I'm just not checking my phone. So at least the only struggle for my focus, if I'm on a train, is the other passengers or my daydreams. So I don't know, but it's never going smooth. So don't let me give you the impression that it's ever going smooth. So those of you else that are trying to work on creative projects should know it's a struggle. It's a real struggle. But the biggest struggles are to do it every day, consistently for a little while, and then to be focused. And so carving out the time that takes 3 years. I mean, it takes a long time. People say you got to do something for 22 days. I think if you want to write something, 22 days is a good start, but if you write for 5 minutes for 22 days, then write for 6 minutes for 22 days, then write for 7 minutes for 22 days. Even after 66 days, it's going to be it's just, that's why I say rigor, because that's, I don't know how I found it, because I'm not a rigorous person normally. But the other challenge, once you have that space, is the mental space to focus on it. And believe me, that's still a huge battle for me. And when I think about the difference, one of the differences, other than talent and intelligence and all those things, of someone that's doing it for a living versus me, who's kind of in this in-between place of trying to do it for a living or kind of part-time doing it, is that focus. And not that people would say, oh, well, that's why I'm successful, because I'm so focused when I write. It's not something you're probably aware of, or maybe they are. I mean, if you listen to John and Craig, they talk about stuff like that, maybe different vocabulary or related struggles, but they're pretty honest. That's why it's just one of my favorite podcasts, Script Notes, things about screenwriting and things interesting to screenwriters. This episode's brought to you by Script Notes. Also script notes, not just scrib notes, but also scrib notes. It's a new notebook I'm selling for when you're for scribbling. Scrib notes. The podcast about scribbling and things interesting to scribblers. Yeah, I should start that podcast, Scrib Notes. Okay, so I got to keep an eye on time here. But so day 6 and day 7 are more of like trying to refine it and trying to get it like a good idea of the sequence of events. And if it's going really well, then even the timing of events. So say, okay, Scoots, where can you go on tangents? So you have your pen pal tangent, and then you have this happens. And is there a tangent in there, or is it the next thing? Okay, is there a tangent in there? So then I just keep an eye on the time as I'm recording it and say, okay, we need about 6 minutes, or it's usually not that, but like, okay, so we're at 38 minutes. We still have 3 events. We're great shape. We're at 38 minutes, and I don't know how much meat's in those 2 events. So this middle one, like, what are some details we can fixate on, or what is, how can we describe this, or what is this character, like, how can these characters have a long conversation about this? I mean, I don't ever, like, write down the times anymore, but I used to do that, like, 3 or 4, 5, probably 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Be like, okay, this will take about 10 minutes. Like, that way I just, like, I guess now I'm more better at eyeballing and be like, okay, that should take 10 minutes. If it doesn't, then we're in, like, but it's good, like, in space and with these different characters. And with this particular narrative voice, it gave me a lot of room because I could just use my thoughts a lot of times. So, and then we record day 7, which was normally would be Thursday nights. The schedule did get messed up, a big combination of events and procrastination, but would be normally like Wednesday night. I don't get home till late. So like Wednesday, by the time I got home and walked the dog in 8, it would be like 8:30 p.m. So I'd record from like 8:30 to like 9:15, 9:30, so I'd just have time normally to do some of the administrative recording for like the teasers. Maybe normally I wouldn't even tell them to do a thank you. So then I do an opening and then the Antonio Banderas part. Then on Thursday, I'd probably do more like I'd do the thank yous, and then I would record the episode. Cause it's not like there's a lot more, just takes longer to record than, the whole idea is the podcast sounds, whatever, free and easy, but the making of it isn't really free and easy. But, so whatever, day 7 we record, and then day 1 starts again the next day. So let's see, in summary, I guess so Dan Harmon's story structure, that worked great, and I'm going to be using it again, because it's similar to Hero's Journey. I don't know, it's just a pathway. I said, let's keep going with it. As far as just laying out, I don't know. I guess I just like it. I'm happy with that. And I'm also happy with this flip-flopping I'm doing of like, okay, let's do a circle, then let's beat it. Like let's do story beats or whatever you want to call it. Whatever, bullet points or listing. And let's find our pen pal thing. I guess the pen pal thing maybe is like a emotional latch for me to feel good too. Like in total uncertainty of like, I don't know how this episode's ever going to come together. I can't tell you how many times I say that on like a Wednesday or Thursday or date, whatever, not on a Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, I guess so. Like kind of Thursday morning. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but then it's like, well, it's going to be okay. And I can kind of go like the pen pal, especially starting out with it, like gives me like this, just a good way to start out. You start out with like something reassuring, and then you can build from there. Okay, so that's Dan Harmon's story structure. I guess I won't, I wanted to talk about some changes though, because I've had some changes in my commute and my schedule, and I just want to talk about that real briefly for anybody else that's working on anything. is that this is a struggle for everybody. Like, if you're like struggling to find time, and now I'm trying to find my commute is going to change, not where, but how I'm commuting. And so now it's like, okay, I'm going to have to get up earlier and go somewhere and write because I'm not going to be commuting by train anymore. So, I mean, because what happened was the car, let's see, I used to commute, but I still had to drive my daughter to school, and the company that I was using, the car share company, I don't know if they went out of business, whatever, they became unreliable, and then they went out, like, then they were purchased or whatever, sold their, so I had to lease a car because electric Chevy Volt, by the way, but I had to lease a car just because I didn't have any way, I had to get my daughter, you know. And it was like the exact same amount of money a month sharing a car versus leasing a car. But so now I don't have time to ride on the train anymore. So the commute will say, like, I still have that time. So I'm going to like go to a coffee shop and write. And actually, I think I'm going to get somebody else that was like say, hey, I'm going to be writing here at these times, these days, if you want to go there. Because I have a friend, I was like, well, trying to work on something. I say, okay, well, I'll be there writing. So if you want to show up and write at the same table as me, I know that's weird. But it's not that weird. So so we'll see how that goes. But it has been a struggle because it's just a change within 4 days. I've had this car. But it has thrown things off. Now, the good thing is it was right. It just happened to be the timing was perfect with the transition to this next series. Which I guess I'll just mention at the end as a payoff here is that we're going to do, it's not a season 2 of Super Doll, or I'm not sure it will be. It will be an episodic version of Super Doll. Probably spanning time frame. So it'll be leaping around. I'm only writing the first episode now, and it's, takes it to the character backstory. So very superhero, like I guess some tropes of superhero stories or shorthand or whatever. But so, because those are characters that I know a lot of people liked. I liked them a lot. It's been hundreds of episodes, I think, since we've heard from them. And it also fits in. I said, well, this could be episodic. Actually, when I decided to do it, I didn't even know that. I was just like, okay, I think we'll do Super Doll yet, but I don't have a story idea for an overarching story. And that's when I was having that internal debate about, what should I do? Should I just keep going with Nuns in Space indefinitely? Another thing about the indefinitely thing, I think 19 episodes is enough, like, for a season. Like, I normally, like, shoot for, like, 14 to 16. And we'll probably be back to Nuns in Space sooner than later, I think. But then I'm like, okay, it's also like that I'm doing Star Trek Next Generation. It just felt like too blurred lines and maybe too much sci-fi, because it's like, okay, well, I got to keep all the listeners in mind. I can't please everybody, but I got to do my best to make this open-armed podcast. And, you know, there is a percentage of people that loathe space. I mean, it just is a fact. And, you know, earthbound humans that loathe space. I think it's 33% is the last poll I saw. 33% of worldwide residents dislike space. The moon, you wouldn't believe this one either because it's made up, is that 25% of humans dislike the moon. I never would have thought that until I just made it up. But, you know, but that's a fact, you know, within my brain. So I think that's about it. Like, as far as, so let's see, we covered episodic series, some of the things, Dan's structure, kind of how my process worked related to using that, kind of the schedule. That schedule can change, trying to be focused versus, I don't know, that's been hard, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, I guess I can close on that too. Is like, that has been something I've really been like, I'm trying to cut back on my hours at work, and I've realized like how much like work the podcast takes. And as the podcast grows, maintaining a community and being accessible and trying to promote the podcast. So those, I can't let those things take away from the production of the podcast, but they're necessary for the sustainability of the podcast. And there are also things that are interacting with the listeners is something I enjoy. Promoting the podcast, I like talking to people. So, and it's like outside of my comfort zone. So it's a learning thing and it's important and it's nice to connect with other people. So, what was my point? Why did I start talking about this? Oh, because I've learned like this focused idea of when you're writing being focused, or when people talk about good bedtime hygiene or good wake up hygiene. I don't think that's a thing. It's like, that those times I spend on my phone, like looking at forums about things or reading the news, like when you say like, so like I said, when the train was going, when I ride the train, it's 15 minutes because it's like a 20-minute train ride. And it's, like those 2.5 minutes is to sit down and take out my bag and stuff. But so, like lately in the past couple of days, I've been just writing for 10 minutes and then working on something else for 10 minutes and then writing for 10 minutes. And it's really hard. I mean, really, really hard. And you put that part of you that doesn't want to do it or wants to procrastinate saying, oh, this is so. But I mean, when I wake up and I look on my phone, 20 or 30 minutes will go by in a flash. And I'm still a human being, so, but it's like trying to say, well, geez, like, I don't know, when I think about, what it means to do this and, to reach a level of success where your projects are sustainable, like there's no secrets and there's no clear way. And some people say, oh, that person had more this or that, or they had more talent or more opportunity, or, more, they were just a fad, or it was a time, they were at the right time. And sure, all those might be true. But this idea of focus and the idea of like, geez, what are the things that are limiting me from being not the best I can be, but like, I guess it goes back to that idea of Stephen Pressfield's like War of Art. Like, I haven't read that in a while, but like, if like, okay, well, this is my job to get this writing done first before I mess around on my phone. Of like, at least just seeing that you have a choice, that's still where I'm at. Like some mornings, I'm like, usually I'm good about meditating, but then I'll be like, well, before I like exercise, let me mess on my phone, or before I write, let me exercise. Like, so it's not easy, this stuff. And, so you should applaud yourself if you're out there trying. And if you're not there, it's because it's not easy. So you shouldn't beat yourself up about it. But at the same time, don't let that hold you back, because it's like the only way to overcome it is just it's the most unglamorous thing, slow, consistent, steady work. I don't know. We'll make up for like the lack of all that other stuff I said. Obviously you got to have some aptitude. I don't like the word talent. I like the word aptitude, which to me means like aptitude means you can have a high skill or whatever you would call talent. The more like the time you spend practicing it, like it means your curve is like, it's like, okay, well, you and Sammy Sam are both at 1.5, whatever, cheeseburger score of writing aptitude. But if, as you write, because I'm writing whatever talent, but as you write, you have this aptitude. So your curve shoots up with each hour you spend, cumulative hour, versus, whatever we said, Sammy Sam's. And maybe even Sammy Sam started higher than you because they're super talented and they come from a family of producers and they went to great school, but their upward curve is different. So you have to have aptitude. I don't know if you have to have talent, but you do have to have aptitude, which is like, I guess, a latent talent maybe. But don't give up on like uncovering that fact, because the only way to uncover it is with the work. And the world right now really needs it, whatever the creative work or service-based work or whatever it is, we need it. We need a richer and more flourishing world to live in. And that's, it just me. I don't know. I guess that's about it. So thanks so much for listening to the podcast and this explorations of story and of my limitations and my aptitude, my potential, and my personal quirks to say, these are the intangible benefits of the podcast for me, is learning about my limits and uncovering an opportunity to say, well, I can figure out this story stuff, and it helps people fall asleep. And that's kind of what fuels the other. It's like an honor. So thanks. All right. Good night. Hey, everybody. It's Drew Scooter here. It's time to talk about tonight's sponsor. The sponsor I'm sleeping in every single night, ideally, except when I'm out of town, and then I'm missing it. And that's my Helix mattress. You could take the mattress quiz at helixsleep.com/sleep. See what mattress you get matched with. I sleep in the Helix Dusk Luxe. And when I took the quiz, that's a mattress I got matched with because I sleep on my side, I sleep on my stomach. I don't like to be hot and stuffy at night, so I love the cooling features. And I know from my experience with traveling that no other mattress fits my sleep needs. There's no other place I'd rather be than in my bed in the sweet, sweet arms of my Helix Dusk Luxe. Because even when I've stayed in really, really nice hotels, I haven't felt like the mattress met my needs and how I sleep. That's what I love about Helix. I mean, you take the quiz, it matches how your sleep and feel preferences. You could take it with your partner. Then the mattress comes straight to your door, shipped free of charge. You just bring it inside and you set it up. So I love my Helix. It's a part of my long-term plans, man. It's like a long-term relationship because sleep's important to me and being comfortable in bed's important to me. So you should check out that Helix quiz. Everybody, this is an exclusive offer for Sleep With Me listeners. It's better than what you find on the public website, so pay attention. Go to helixsleep.com/sleep for 27% off site-wide, plus 2 free Dream Pillows with mattress purchase, plus a free bedding bundle, 2 Dream Pillows, a sheet set, and a mattress protector with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for 27% off site-wide, plus 2 free Dream Pillows with mattress purchase, plus a free bedding bundle, 2 Dream Pillows, a sheet set, and mattress protector with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody.